I'm no Chris Harris, Matt Farah, or JF. This isn't my day job. I'm a student trying to make something out of any opportunity I get to give you this series about following my dreams. Wow, that was intense. Welcome to My Life as a Rallyist, a story about me and my car and trying to get started in a sport that costs more than your paycheck. This is how the series ends, with me fixing my broken car in negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so yeah, and the way I'm looking at the spline on the new one, there's no, you can just put this in any way, right? There's no like lead end you need to be in. Yeah. Whoa! Stop right there. Before we get started, I want everyone to know this is real. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ryan Symancek. I'm 23 years old, and I'm currently a senior at Bates College in Lewiston, Maine, USA. This is my dorm room. You can tell I like rally by the assortment of posters, and stacks of tires and rims. Why rally? Because it defines me. I'm an adventure guy. I enjoy skiing, off-roading, airplanes, and being in the outdoors. So it only seems logical that the motorsport that defines me is rally racing. I became involved in rallying by playing video games. This transferred me into getting my license and learning how to drift a full-size Ford Bronco, my first car. Just out of high school, I decided to get into motorsports locally. It was cheaper than to go find rallies. So I bought a $200 Ford Ranger and fabricated my own roll cage. The build was for a local Pennsylvania stadium truck series called Tough Trucking. This was the start of my dirt motorsports, with obviously my hopes to be in a rally car in the near future. However, rallying isn't cheap, so I started crewing for teams and eventually made my way into co-driving. Being a senior in college and getting into motorsports is almost impossible. I don't really have a lot of time to be putting into trying to be either developing as a co-driver or developing as a driver, so the easiest thing for me was to buy a small car and enter SCCA Rallycross events, which this series is about. So I hope you watch the whole thing. It means a lot. It's been a dream to me for over a year and a half. 1 year ago, I began to chase a dream that started very young. As soon as I could, I rallied. I took inspiration from drivers like Ken Block, sometimes a little bit too seriously. But life caught up to me, and my money went to other things like college. My definition of a rallyist is anyone who thinks about or does rallying instead of doing what they're supposed to be doing. Since I was still in school, basically I was just rally daydreaming. This, however, was all about to change. I know what you're thinking. How does this guy get a ship? Out of my sophomore year of college, I was looking for internships. I wanted to work in New York City because I was working with Bill Petro at Broken Motrosports, which is right across the river. And it made it easy to okay, I could do an internship and I could also work with Billy and learn more rally car stuff. It didn't happen. Nobody emailed me back. I saw a video of Chris Harris on cars. The BMW in the UK rally school video where he grabs like a 325i or whatever car that is, and it's just like ripping around and he's like, oh bloody hell, this is pretty good, I think this is good fun, you know? And I was like, oh, this guy's good, like who's driving that well? What's this drive all about? I never watched any episodes before that, so I started clicking around and and I remember Matt Farah from the Smoking Tire, and I was like, oh, he's part of this too? Like, how's this coming all together? So I tried to go and find Drive's contact info. I was like, oh, if they're ever filming in the New York area, I'll hit them up, and maybe they want a camera guy. I couldn't find anything, but I knew of the Smoking Tire, and I found the lead cameraman for the Smoking Tire, Tom Morningstar, and I emailed him, and within hours he had an email back. hey man, like we're filming in Monticello, New York in like 2 days. And he's like, oh, by the way, there's a studio in New York City. And like, we're filming there, we'll be there, like if you wanna come help us, like show up. Jeff hands me a camera, like pretty much thinking that I'm like getting paid for this or something. I sent the footage back and they're like, oh, footage is great, thanks a lot. I didn't realize until I hit them up for an internship a week later that they had no clue who I was. They had no clue I was showing up. Tom was the only one who was like, oh, like, show up. I'm like, okay. So I figured out, I was like, yeah, I was announced. I wasn't announced at all. Tom was just like, yeah, this is my buddy Ryan. Basically, I earned enough trust with them that they said, okay, come on a couple shoots with us. So right into my internship, I was coming on shoots, and by the end of the internship, I said, look, JF, I could do this video series if you're interested. And it took him a little bit, but now we're here. Now we're doing it. It's my senior year in college, and I knew if I was going to race rallycross at all, this was the year to start doing it. Going to Bates College, I was in the prime location, New England. Plenty of rallycrosses here. Rallycross is the simplest form of stage rallying really you could do. They go to a field and they set up cones and you drive around them all day. So it's autocross like everybody knows, except on dirt. It's a very easy way to get into learning how to slide a car, learning how to set it up, and do those things. It's basically, look, I'm Petter Solberg, watch me drift this car, except there's no consequence if I spin out and there's no trees. My goal is to buy a car that can do a few rallycrosses. Maybe one that I could daily drive, or possibly one that I could trailer with a car dolly. I had about $2,000 to spend on this rallycross car. So for that money, what would you rallycross? I met up with my friend Mike to do some research.
Now where do people always go when they need to find a car for under $2 grand?
Craigslist.
Yes, they do.
I'm on Craigslist. Rally car. I love Scirocco's.
Scirocco's are so fast.
Almost no rust. In Maine, that means 3 floorboards exist and 1 you walk, like Flintstones.
Oh yeah. You would be the coolest guy at the Rallycross if you showed up in a trans there. Are you kidding me? Is he trying to trade for a dirt bike?
Or a Chevy Tacoma Nissan Titan 4x4 all-wheel drive 5-speed, stick single cab, work truck, Honda GM.
Well, we gotta go to a different state, dude.
84 Chevy S10 Blazer plow buggy. No,
I mean, you could try to Rallycross that.
Terrible.
You would probably roll. You know what VTEC stands for, don't you?
Volkswagen.
Oh, whoa, no, 1 Series, dude.
What's a 1 Series?
It's a BMW.
No.
Yes.
No,
it's not.
It's a Saturn.
Oh, it got some minor damage.
It's auto. We gotta build something.
Dude, for $800, we could just
beat it.
Yeah. 97 Civic, $600.
No!
Oh, dude, he's sponsored. No. He's sponsored.
It's Ken Block.
It's Ken Block.
No way.
Ken Block's 97 Civic. Like you have to go out of your way to get a sticker that big.
That's huge. You have to be
like
sponsored.
you're committed.
Well, after about an hour or two of Craigslist searching, we narrowed it down to these few cars. Car number 1, the good old Volvo 240. There was like a couple criteria things that needed to be covered. At the time, I daily drove a Toyota pickup. I owned a car dolly, right? So between those two things, my idea was, well, I can own a front-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive small car, rallycross it, because I didn't need to register, I didn't need to license the car, right? It just can go on the field and rallycross. Didn't need anything else. So my idea was, come to school, drive my truck like I always do, and then stash my dolly and my rallycross car somewhere at a friend's house, and just go and get it when I needed it. So what's the first car I look at? The first car I look at is a Volvo 242. Heavy, rear-wheel drive, Swedish brick. All bets were off when I saw that car. I was like, that's the car I want. That's gonna be sick. And then I tried to start this Kickstarter campaign, and that didn't really come through, but I called it Indie Volvo. So Indie Volvo, we're gonna make an indie video about Volvo drifting. Because it was cool, it was like hipster. It was green, it had a big header, it was really loud, and it had a limited slip diff in the back, gravel tires, and a bolt-in roll cage, and the guy wanted like $1,300 for it. That whole time I was like, oh, it's gonna be sick. And then I was emailing the guy back and forth, And then I realized that, okay, it's pretty rusty back there. And like, if I was gonna have this Volvo, I would have to daily drive it. And it became more of like, well, there's gonna be a lot of sheet metal welding. There's gonna be a lot of that, like, right off the bat. And it just started to fade away. Car number 2, the Volkswagen Rabbit GTI. The Volkswagen we were looking at was in Wells, Maine, from another Mike. We get there and he's got this slammed Mark I Rabbit, and this was the first car we went and saw. The first car. I still had long hair. This was my favorite front-wheel drive pick out of the bunch, and when we got there, he was like, oh, like, yeah, by the way, this is right by Carl Merrill's house. And Carl Merrill, at the time, had a Ford Escort Cosworth. And what Mike had told me was that he actually grew up with the Ford Escort Cosworth driving up and down that road.
I used to drive by all the time. I personally didn't know him, but it was sweet growing up, and
so if you
there was a little bit of rally scene around, you know, just in this little area of Wells, Maine.
So like, he, as a young kid, was also inspired by rally. Never really got into it, but you know, was pretty excited that, hey, okay, these guys want to like rally it. Maybe it'll become a stage car someday, but they want to rallycross it. Pretty cool. So he was a really nice guy, and he let us do a bit of driving with it, and would have fell in love with this car, but there was one major issue, and it was the gearbox.
It's always the gearbox.
Yeah, but it couldn't even get into first gear. I mean, you drove it.
That was a bit.
I drove. It was like.
Yeah, you go second first.
You didn't even know.
Trick.
Yeah, you didn't even know if you were in first gear. It had a bit of rust, but it wasn't bad for Maine. It had the power still, and second steeziest on the list, so you'd look cool. It was also front-wheel drive. It was also light, so put it on the dolly, it would have worked. But end of day, the transmission, not really having the expertise or the time to swap a trans, that kind of shut us down. My friend Jacob Perkins, who I met through rallycrossing, he was like, hey, I'm really looking, you know, why don't you just buy a Sentra? I helped him find one. And I was like, yeah, I really want, like, that's a cool looking car. I like it. I really want it.
In 2011, I bought an old 1988 Nissan Sentra for $300. And I just replaced some cooling system components in it and ran it. It was my daily driver the whole year. I had an absolute blast. I run in stock front wheel drive with this car. It's as it came from the factory.
I think the Sentra is like the most underrated front wheel drive car out there. Sentras have a small following, but they don't have a Volkswagen following. They don't have a Honda following, but they have the SR20 motor in them. They have a limited slip diff in the front, and they're literally ridiculously fast. He invited us down to his place in New Hampshire, and he was like, okay, let's go down there and check it out. There's an ice race happening. So we checked out the ice race. After we showed up, it didn't take long to realize ice racing is the NASCAR version of rallycrossing. Once the race was over, I got to try out the Sentra. For around a $2,000 price tag, Jacob got 140 horsepower to the front wheels. And on studded snow tires, this thing was a beast. We re-entered the icy track right as the snow started to fall. This is Lee Pond, home to boats and fishing stuff, but it's winter and I don't see any ice fishing huts. Finally out in the snow in an SE-R. Front wheel understeer, limited slip looking well, let's flick it in, get it around. The only real problem that this thing needs is a better defroster because I cannot see, I'm looking out of a piece of glass that is this big. And it's a complete whiteout out on the lake right now. Once I got a handle on the front wheel drive inputs I spent the rest of the afternoon lapping the oval ice track. It was no question that the Sentra SE-R stole my heart. However, when I returned to Broken Motrosports...
So Ryan came to me with the idea of building a rallycross car / rally car, and he had a couple of ideas that I wasn't really all that fond of.
What I didn't realize was I could have a working Subaru for around $2,000. So after some convincing, that's what I went for. But more on that next time. So we got $2,000. $2,000 to build a car.
It can be done.
So I've thought of a few, right? Like this 1966 356 Porsche.
Yeah, that would be definitely a good jumping off point.
I think that's right.
In the winter, I don't see any ice fish.
Hold on.
So the question on everybody's minds is that during this interview, was I wearing pants? And the answer is no.